Okay. Hopefully you guys watched yesterday's recording or join me live. Otherwise, you're going to be confused on what's happening. So, little recap. Remember, we got some troublemakers, and they are now on a boat. Instead of like a juvie center, they are on a boat. It's a 60-foot boat. We have Luke, who, remember, has a felony charge for having a gun at school, which we talked about how is not appropriate. We don't know how the gun got to school, but there's that. JJ is the super rich kid that was in our last little parts that we were talking about, who's, stole a car, brought alcohol to a school dance, all this crazy stuff. So now he's on the boat. Will and Liza, they are siblings who apparently just fight. Then Charla and Ian, let me remind myself what they are there for. I don't know if it says what they're there for. But regardless, Charla and Ian just joined us. Yeah, I don't think we know why Charla and Ian are there yet, but remember, Ian was upset that there's no internet access. So crazy stuff. But remember, it tells us the days of the week and the time and stuff. So we are on chapter 4, which is Tuesday, July 11th at 7:30 in the morning. Okay? Heave, bellowed Mr. Radford, untying the lines and pitching them onto the Phoenix. Remember, the Phoenix is the name of the boat. Luke, Charla, and Liza stood on the edge of the deck, poles in hand, pushing against the dock to move the schooner away from the mooring part of a boat. Put some back into it, hollowed the mate. Luke strained until he felt his spine was about to snap. Water opened up between the dock and the boat. Radford jumped aboard. He cupped his hands to his mouth. Clear! In the cockpit, Captain Cascadin engaged the engine. The Phoenix began to pick her way directly out of the harbor. Luke watched the multicolored sails of the other boats go by as the deck thundered under his feet. Sure, he would have given his right arm to be almost anywhere else, but there was a certain majesty about gliding across the water. Definitely a feeling you couldn't get in Williamston Juvenile Detention Facility. He could see that his fellow crew members felt it too, all except one. Captain, my father is a powerful man in Hollywood, said JJ smoothly. I know he'd make it worth your while if you put me on a plane back to the States. The captain's eyes never waved from the course he was steering. This is the States, crewman. I know, the real States, L.A. Coast Guard cutter off the starboard bow. 300 yards, warned Radford from his perch of the ratline. Your father, said the captain, paid good money for you to be on this trip. I saw the check, crewman. It's a misunderstanding, JJ insisted. He signed me up for the boating thing. Just not this boat thing. I mean, no offense, but you've got 4 people sleeping in a closet, and the bathroom is a phone booth. I can't even honk. Will clapped his hands onto the bulwark and held on until the ear-splitting blast of the air horn died away. His racing heart slowed. What was he doing here? How had his life come to this? On the wrong side of the globe, setting sail on a wooden cracker box? If I get out of this, he made a deal with this guy. I swear I'll never cheat on another math test. The Phoenix didn't put on the brakes and turned around. Instead, the schooner eased through the mouth of the harbor. So, he sweetened the pot. I swear I'll floss from now on every night. So Mr. Will is trying to pray his way out of it. Okay, Sky, if you stop the boat, I'll do all this. He's trying to make favors with the Sky. Rough hands grabbed him by the collar. Off your butt, RG. This is a working ship. Radford cupped his hands to his mouth. Ready, on the mainsail. Skipper! Haul, bellowed the captain. Will and Charla began yanking away at the halyard hand over hand. With the creak of the ringing and the mainsail began to rise. Ahead of them, Luke and Ian were hauling up the foresail, their faces taut with concentration. Closer to the bow, JJ and Liza worked on the smaller staysail. Didn't it figure? They gave Lisa the easy sail. It had been like that from the beginning. She was always the sweet little baby, while Will was the older one who should know better. People loved Liza. The good looks in the family were all hers. He got stuck with Freckles. She was straight-A student. He struggled. I should have been an only child, he grunted through the strain of his effort. Charla looked down at him like he was crazy. Liza's fault, as usual. When the wind caught the half-open mainsail, its force pulled the Hallard right out of Will's hands, delivering a painful rope burn. Charla held on, but the sail was taut. The line was difficult to budge. Will clamped himself on again, and both led into it with all their might. It went up the sail, flapping full. "You'll earn your dinner tonight," roared Radford. The mate had joined Luke and Ian. Soon the foresail was up. Last came the jibs. Two small sails extended from the head of the foremast to the bowsprit. The long, thin spar that stretched forward from the bow. By the way, the bow is the side of a boat, just in case you're wondering. The crew fell back, exhausted. Will looked at his hands, which were blistered and bleeding. You'd think they'd figure out a way to put up sails without taking all your skin. He caught sight of his sister. She was smiling. Smiling! "If this was over really fast," Will promised, "I swear I'll get in shape. I'll jog every day. I'll lift weights. Don't get comfortable," growled Radford. "This is the main sheet. It's not a sheet off your bed. It's a line, and these pulleys are called blocks. Watch what happens when I ease up on the main sheet." Expertly, the mate undid the knot and gave the rope some slack. He turned. "Hey, Archie!" Luke turned. "Yeah?" The gust of wind took the sail and swung it out over their heads, right angles at the boat. Bang! The block swept around and smacked Luke full in the face, knocking him off his feet. Radford laughed out loud. "I was going to warn you, but never mind." When the foresail was aligned, Captain Cascading cut power and let the schooner run with the wind. The crisp breeze blew away the swifting Guam humidity in an instant. "Now you're sailing," rumbled the captain behind the wheel. "There's no feeling quite like it." Liza hopped up on the engine housing, threw her arms wide, and let her hair whip in the wind. "Feel that breeze?" "Where I come from," Charlotte told her, "a wind like this would knock you right off the fire escape." Will burned. Liza was making friends here, like she did everywhere. By the time this trip was over, she was going to be voted Miss Congeniality on this tub. This would be like a vacation for her while he suffered. So right in the beginning, we were hearing all from Luke, and now we're kind of hearing from Mr. Will's point of view, and he's feeling super jealous of his sister right now, like extra stinking jealous. It was so unfair. If it wasn't for Liza, they wouldn't even be on this dumb trip. Sure, he got in her face a lot. She deserved it. Besides, when they were fighting, it's always Lisa who went ballistic. Involuntarily, his mind jumped to the incident that his parents had come to call the last straw. The argument started out small. 2 Halloween parties. Who would get dropped off first? Something like that. No big deal. He remembered Mom in the background screaming for them to calm down. And then the marble rolling pin from Lisa's chef costume was hurling towards his face. He heard rather than felt his nose break. The blood poured like somebody had busted a hydrant. He couldn't even recall fighting back. He must have, though, because when he woke up in the hospital, Liza was in the bed next to him with a concussion. Both of them were so beaten up that the cops had to file a special report to rule out child abuse. "Take my word for it," the police officer assured the Greenfield parents. "If you don't do something about these 2, they're going to kill each other." Okay, so that's how, like, obviously siblings fight. You know, that's kind of like a natural part of life. I mean, not saying you should ever harm your sibling, but bickering with your sibling, that's kind of a natural part of life. But Will and his sister put each other in the hospital. That is how rough they were fighting. That's how they ended up here. They put themselves in the hospital because they were so mean to each other. And just their luck, the admitting nurse happened to have a third cousin whose juvenile delinquent son had been sent on a boat trip called Charting a New Course. Tears stung Will's eyes as Guam became smaller and smaller. Now he's going to be the ship's crybaby, too. He ran for the companionway to the main cabin, determined no one should see him. There he came face to face with Luke, who was holding a cold towel to his rapidly swelling eye. "You're my witness," Luke sleed. "You saw that lousy rat face. He did it on purpose." Will smiled. His first of the day. "Rat face Radford. Why didn't I think of that? That's funny." "No, it isn't," Luke ragged. "It's the least funny thing on this very unfunny trip." With a sigh, Will followed him back on deck. It was a small comfort that he wasn't the only one who was miserable. Liza was hanging around with the captain, schmoozing him, and while he was explaining how the boat's motor worked. Will snorted in disgust. One science fair project on the internet combustion engine, and Liza thought she was Jeff Gordon's whole pit crew. He looked back at the sky. If I get out of this, but he wasn't getting out of anything. Guam was barely a speck on the horizon. The best he could hope for was a sign, something, anything that hinted all this might turn out okay. An odd look came over Liza's face as she stood with the captain halfway down the engine hatch. With a strangled sound, she scrambled with a sigh, draped herself over the lifeline, and was thoroughly, violently sick. So that's going to be Will's only good thing, is that his sister's apparently getting seasick. So that's the only, like, ahaha, my sister's getting seasick. So we're both going to be miserable. All right, we're heading on to the 12th now. So it's the next day, chapter 5. Wednesday, July 12th at 1100 hour, which means 11 o'clock in the morning. Lisa hit the water first, a cannonball that sent a splash all the way back to Captain Cascaded in the cockpit. It's warm, she shrieked, amazed. Will was next, climbing carefully down the boat's ladder. He submerged and bobbed like a cork. It is warm. It's great. Luke jumped in and paddled around happily. It felt good to be cool and clean. Hey, Ian, called Will, get your feet wet. The younger boy averted his eyes. I don't think so. Come on, you'll love it, Liza promised. But Ian had disappeared down the companionway in the sleeping quarters. Luke shook his head. Poor kid. He forgot to download his personality before they made him ship his computer home. I wonder why he got sent here, mused Liza. He probably wouldn't mind his own business, just like you, snickered Will. Shut up. Charla stood poised at the gun wall. She was perched only on the tip of her toe. She didn't move a muscle. Even the gentle rocking of the boat. Gracefully, she sailed off the side in a perfect jackknife, hitting the water with barely a splash. The other swimmers and even Captain Carcinia brushed into cheers and applause. Charla broke the surface, took a few smooth, powerful strokes, then flipped effortlessly to the boat on her back. She had always been comfortable in the water, but it was more than that. Swimming somehow seemed to relieve her pressures and tensions, and she had quite a few. You're a fish, cried Will. She shrugged modestly. I'm on the swimming team at school. And the diving team, asked Luke. She nodded shyly. But you were talking about track and field before, put in Liza. Only the 100-yard medals and the hurdle, said Charla, embarrassed by the attention. I like gymnastics better anyway. She felt a twinge of uneasiness. Why was she talking so much? These people didn't need to know her private business. Man, what are you doing here? Explained Luke. You're the perfect kid. What, your parents signed you up because you're too good? Maybe you can take rotten lessons from Ratface? Charlotte's smile disappeared. I'm not so good. In 2 textbook strokes, she was at the ladder and chammering back on board. Luke was mystified. What'd I say? Don't worry, Luke, said Will. You can accuse me of being so good. I can take it. Elijah splashed him in the face. There are lots of words that describe you. Good isn't one of them. Charlotte glared down at them from the gunwale. Rich kids always acted like they knew everything. What did they have to worry about besides deciding which mall to shop at? The other athletes she knew, the ones whose dads weren't working 3 jobs, could only enjoy their sports. It wasn't their ticket. It's your ticket out, Charla. It's your ticket up. Your ticket to college. Your ticket to a better life. She heard those words 20 times a day from her father. Pick one sport. You're spreading yourself out too thin. It's your ticket to the Olympic team. Go, go, go. I'm 12, Dad. And isn't this supposed to be fun? I don't want to get a ticket. If I even hear that word again, I'm going to scream. Maybe if she had the guts to say that, she might have avoided the fateful morning when she couldn't get out of bed because her arms and legs wouldn't move. Charla Swan, who could twist herself into a graceful pretzel on the uneven bars, could barely walk into the emergency room, and yet there was nothing physically wrong with her. Burnout, classic burnout, the doctors had said, and that had led to a ticket even her father hadn't anticipated, the one to Guam that included the birth on the Phoenix and a bunch of spoiled rich kids. Well, okay, they weren't really rich, just richier than her, which wasn't hard to be, except for that hotshot from California. He was loaded. He had a pair of sunglasses that would probably sell for more than her dad's car. Come to think of it, where was JJ? Then a voice yelled, Aloha! A voice from above. There was JJ high up in the mainsail rigging. Captain Causaden screamed too. Crewman, get down from there this instant. JJ waved. Sorry, Captain, I can't hear you. Mr. Radford roared at the captain. I need you on deck. The mate was asleep in his berth after taking his last night's watch, but the captain's strident voice brought him up the companionway in a matter of seconds. He took in the scene for an instant. Don't even think about it, he barked furiously. Too late. With a Y of Guermino, JJ grabbed one of the loose ropes and swung himself off the main mast, clear past the deck and over the open sea. There, he let go and dropped like a stone into the water. So JJ, like on sailboats, they have like those really long poles. So JJ was like at the top of the pole where the top of a sail would be and took a rope and like swang off the boat. Obviously, a dangerous thing to do. It seemed like a long time, a breathless time, before JJ surfaced again, howling in triumph. The celebration was short-lived. Cursing with rage, Mr. Radford took a running leap off the side of the boat and hit the water swimming. His form was crude and untrained, but Charla had never seen anybody move that fast in the water. He scooped JJ up, Red Cross style, towed him back to the swim ladder and hauled him up, still protesting on board. You miserable little muckworm. Do you know what mutiny is? JJ blinked innocently. Wasn't that a classic movie from way back when you were, still old? Now Radford was screaming, Listen, Richie Rich, when we left Guam, we left the United States. In international waters, the captain is God. I'm the assistant God. When we say come down, down is where you come. He turned his fury on the three still in the water. Okay, swimming's over. You've got your friend Richie Rich to thank for that. Charla watched in sympathy as Luke, Will, and Liza scrambled nervously up the swimming ladder. Captain Cascading was a nice man, she reflected, but he didn't seem to notice that his mate was more than just a Gulf sailor. Mr. Radford didn't like people, especially kids, and his bellying seemed to increase with their distance from land. She swallowed hard. This was going to be a lot farther than this. All right, so now we know. Luke is there because he had a gun at school. Will and Liza are there because they fight at home. JJ's there because he got in trouble at his school, stole his dad's motorcycle, brought alcohol to a dance, all these crazy things. And Charla, we can't totally figure out why she's there, but she's a really gifted athlete, and her father put a lot of pressure on her. And because of all her pressure, her body kind of stopped working. So she probably is just having a lot of anxiety and all these crazy things. So they're saying she's burnt out. So that's not a total definition on why she's here, but she's a burnt out athlete at only 12. All right. So we still don't know about Ian, though. All we know is that he's really sad that he doesn't have his computer and stuff.
Being an athlete at 12 is really, really hard.
Yeah, right. So she's just really burnt out. Her body's just not working like it should be anymore because she's already been such an athlete at 12. Chapter 6, Thursday, July 13th, 22:35. So that's 10 o'clock at night, I think. Luke had plenty of complaints about ship broad life, but he couldn't say there was nothing to do. In fact, he'd never been so busy. The sails alone were a full-time career. They constantly needed rising, lowering, trimming, letting in, letting out. Somehow the state they were in was never the right one. When Luke and the others weren't fussing with the boat, they were fussing with the sea around it. Science stuff mostly. Whale watching, plankton towing, identify schools of fish. They did math with the wave highs and water temperatures and the index into their location, which they got in a handheld global positioning satellite system. It was all supposed to go in their logbooks, but Luke could never think of anything to write. He was just sitting on the deck trying to describe a fish he'd seen 10 hours ago when a shadow fell across the flashlit page. Captain Costadian was unfolding his 6'5" frame out of the companionway. Evening, crewman. He noticed the logbook in Luke's hands. Keeping a log is one of the greatest pleasures of life at sea. As the years go by, you'll read this over many times. Right. He wanted to relive this lousy trip any more than he wanted to remember the arrest and trial leading up to it. He bit his tongue and said nothing. Captain Cascading could be annoying with his long, boring speeches about the joys of the sea, but he was a nice guy at heart. You definitely had to respect him, not like rat face. Here's something that would make a fascinating entry, the captain rambled on, pointing it to the sky. Notice the bright halo around the moon? According to legend, that tells of a coming storm. Counting the stars around the ring, 1, 2, that means a storm is 2 days away. Really? Luke was amazed. And that works? The captain chuckled. It's an old salt's tale, but 100 years ago, it was considered science. He made a great show of lighting a corncob pipe. Today, we get constant weather updates by fax. So there's no storm, said Luke. We're fine, the captain assured him. Rough seas tomorrow, though. No swimming. Luke said goodnight and slipped down the companionway to the boys' cabin. Bad news, Evel Knievel, he said to JJ. No swimming tomorrow. You'll have to find another way to kill yourself. Bug off, yawned the actor's son. He rolled over in his bunk and banged on the buckhead. Hey, ladies, which one of you wants to come over and give me a nice foot massage? There was a scrambling around the deck above them, followed by a shuffling of shoes on the companionway. The furious face of Mr. Radford soon appeared. Hey, Richie Rich, the girls' cabin is on the starboard side. Behind this bulkhead is where I sleep. And if I get any more invitations like that, you're going to be over the side with an anchor in your pants. Way to go, Luke muttered in a low voice as the mate stormed away. Ratface isn't the friendliest guy in the world as it is. Thanks for putting him in an even worse mood. We really need the grief. It's not smart, added Will in a softer tone. When he's mad at you, he's mad at all of us. Thanks for the life lesson, said JJ sarcastically. Don't you know who I am? My father is Jonathan Lane. But I'm not Bugs Bunny's kids, and I'm Bugs Bunny's kid, snorted Luke. Notice the family's resemblance? I am, JJ insisted. He pulled out the sunglasses out of the pocket shirt. Paul Smith, the fashion designer, gave these to my dad in England last year. They're custom made. There's not another pair of them. There's not another pair like them in the world. Luke examined the sleek silver shades. On one earpiece was engraved, Jonathan Lane, The Taste of London, P.S. Will was impressed. Your dad's an amazing actor. It all came together in Luke's mind. Rich father, fancy lawyers. If Luke had had that, this is just great, he exclaimed. You're allowed to be a maniac because you know your big shot daddy has the power to get you out of anything. Furiously, JJ leaped out of his bunk and into Luke's face. Well, I'm stuck here with you, so obviously there are a few things he can't get me out of, right? They stood sneering, seething toe to toe. Hey, come on, began Will, but a brawl seemed unavoidable. Then a muffled sob broke through the tensions, and all three of them followed the sound. Ian Socrates rocked back and forth on his bunk, his knees pulled to his chest. He was crying as if he had just met the end of the world. Hey, said Luke in a voice that was none too steady. Don't do that. Nothing's worth it. Yeah, echoed JJ, speaking as much to Luke as to Ian. Ian nodded and sniffling, struggling to get himself under control. It was Will who couldn't leave well enough alone. Ian, what did a nice kid like you do to get yourself on a seat of the Windjammer cruise? I watched TV, quavered the young boy, and the tears started up again. This time there was no stopping him until sleep claimed him. Okay. So apparently Ian watched some TV and that's why he's on here. Okay. So we are going to stop there for today. Thank you for joining me. We will start up next week, but we are already on page almost 40. So we should be able to finish this book by next week, and then you can all get 3 more AR points. So thank you for joining. If you have not finished anything from this week, you need to get it done. Reading tests, grammar tests, any other assignments, get them done, friends. Have a great weekend. Miss you guys. Bye.
Bye. See you Monday.
See ya. Get everything done.